Hello there YouTubers, I'm Charlie Chittenden and welcome to part 7 of my lucid dreaming videos. In this part I'll be explaining the techniques that I prefer to use in terms of inducing a lucid dream. The technique that I'm about to explain is known as the wake back to bed technique, and I've found this to be by far the most successful technique for me personally which I've used. Now basically, in order to perform this technique, you need to go to bed and set your alarm to awaken you at around 6 hours after you go to bed. Now for me, I generally retire to bed at around 11:30 in the evening, and before doing so I will set my alarm to awaken me at 5 AM. You then need to get into bed and close your eyes, and then you need to repeat what is known as a mantra, which I mentioned earlier in one of my previous videos. I will repeat to myself in my head, I'm going to have a dream, I'm going to remember the dream, because I'm going to write the dream down in the morning. I will repeat this approximately a dozen times in my mind until I've firmly resolved to do this. At the same time, and needless to say, it's very important to shut out any invading and irrelevant thoughts that do not relate to your goal of achieving a lucid dream. These thoughts need to be immediately discarded as soon as you're aware that you're having them, and you need to mentally revert back to your intention to lucid dream. When you've repeated your mantra around a dozen times and you firmly resolve to achieve a lucid dream, you then need to focus upon hypnagogic imagery. Now hypnagogic imagery is the flashing lights, shapes and forms that we all see when we close our eyes in bed underneath our eyelids. Now these forms at first can become and feel very basic and seem very basic, but if you can concentrate on them and focus upon them, you can make them increasingly intricate and elaborate. There are two fundamental purposes for doing this. Now, as we all know, the last thing that you think about before you lose consciousness and fall asleep can have a dramatic effect on what you dream about. Now, if you can make your hypnagogic imagery very detailed and elaborate to the point that where you're watching moving images underneath your eyelids and you're aware that your mind is creating these, this is a very good concept to have on your mind at the moment you fall asleep. Second of all, if you focus upon hypnagogic imagery and can create intricate moving images before you fall asleep, you may lose consciousness without realizing it and go straight into what is known as a wild, awake-initiated lucid dream, which is something I'll explain later on. Now, when it comes to observing your hypnagogic imagery, you need to do certain things. First of all, I find it's advisable to keep your eyes straight, even though they are closed. If you try and look around and look for hypnagogic imagery underneath your eyelids, it's likely to evade you. It seems to appear when you're not looking for it. Again, it's important not to try and force images to emerge beneath your eyelids. Be very casual and be a casual observer. Now, these images will start off as being very primitive and basic, and it's very important, I find, and advantageous to comment to yourself about what you are seeing. I'll say, oh, that looks like a star, and now that looks like a man's arm and somebody dancing, and this seems to promote and encourage your mind to elaborate on these images and make them more detailed for you. You will then go to sleep and your alarm will awaken you at 5 AM, as in my example. You will then get up out of bed. Now you may have a non-lucid dream and you therefore have dreams to write down. Now, as I mentioned before, you should do this with moving physically as little as you can and write them down in a detailed fashion as possible. Your intention now is to stay awake for the next 30 minutes. Now you need to get out of bed after writing your dream down and truly wake yourself up and rouse yourself. You then need to sit and read, in my view, a lucid dreaming related book. Again, any thoughts during this 30-minute period that do not relate to lucid dreaming, you need to immediately discard and return your mind to the concept of lucid dreaming. You should read a lucid dreaming related book for approximately 30 minutes and then you should return to bed. You will then very likely have a lucid dream. I've found this technique for me has worked approximately on 1 of every 3 occasions. So that's not bad, 1 out of every 3 times. So I'd very much recommend that experience for you. Also, this is advantageous because it kind of gives you a double chance of having a lucid dream. You have until 5 AM to have a lucid dream, during which you may have one. Before, I've had a lucid dream before I've woken up for the wake back to bed. I was directly awakened from a lucid dream before. And if you fail to have a lucid dream and your alarm wakes you at 5 o'clock, you still have that second chance when you return to sleep half an hour later. It's also very important to remember, and some people, particularly novice lucid dreamers, may not be aware, it's very possible to forget a lucid dream that you've had. I've had many exhilarating and thrilling experiences only to lay there in bed relaxing and dwelling upon them, noticing that the details in my mind are deteriorating and dissolving, and I've had to jump out of bed and write what I can recall down. So it's very important. Don't take your lucid dreams for granted. They may seem like unforgettable experiences as soon as you've experienced them, but it's important to get out of bed and recall them as quickly as you can. Anyway, feel free to rate and comment, and I'd love to hear from any of you that have tried that technique several times to give me your viewpoint on it. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.